I realized over the last couple of years that I interpret things or I view things in a different way than what they're supposed to be viewed as, um, and it has always made me feel inferior to people who are really intelligent as far as programming, training, competing, diet, mobility, stuff like that. People in the sport who are well accomplished, it makes me feel extremely uh, inferior when I hear them talk about certain things, and I would be like, I don't look at it that way. I feel like we all get to the same end product. I'll give you an example. Uh, like the first couple of years in powerlifting, I used a lot of chains, and I had no idea what accommodating resistance was. I didn't know who Louis Simmons was. I knew nothing about accommodating resistance. The whole point of using bands and chains, I didn't know what that was. All I knew is that it made the lifts harder, and if I did not know the exact amount of weight on the bar, um, I didn't get lost in the frustrations of the actual bar weight. I always broke my training down into 3 months out I did 3 reps, 2 months out I did 2 reps, 1 month out I did 1 rep, and I would always have chains on the bar, and it would always be the same. It'd always be 90 pounds of chains because I had these specific links made up. Um, but even though I knew that it was 90 pounds of chains on the bar, you never really know how much weight is actually on the bar because there's chains on the ground, and you just never actually know. So the only thing I knew was that I needed to do a triple and I needed to beat the week before that. And if I were to just be using straight weight, which I started to for, like the first year or so, I was just strictly using just bar weight. I got extremely frustrated because I focused so much on the fact that I knew what much weight was on the bar and I fixated on that. And I almost quit powerlifting, like my first couple years into it because I got so frustrated with that, and a lack of progress. It's like I almost quit. And it wasn't until a buddy of mine was using chains, I think he was deadlifting with them. Uh, and I was like, that's cool. Like, I like that. Chains, they look gritty. It looks hardcore. And it just looks like it makes the lift harder. Like, as you're raising the weight, it gets heavier. Like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? And I started using them, and my progress started to take off drastically. Now, I knew nothing about accommodating resistance. I didn't know why Louis Simmons brought them to light. Not that he invented them, but like why he made them mainstream and brought them to light. All I knew was that it made the lift harder in my mind, and since I didn't know how much weight was on the bar, my only focus was on working as hard as I could that day for the rep range that I needed to do. That is another example. That's just one example of I was using chains just for a completely different reason than what they were meant to be used for. Another one is speed. I have never ever looked at speed and training as I need to do dynamic effort work. I need to do other types of training to build my explosiveness, plyometrics, stuff like that. I was never focused on that. I didn't even know what that shit was. I mean, I was concerned that on a specific day of training, if the bar moved fast, that meant I was strong. Like if I came in and my goal was to work up to a heavy double, and if I was getting up near weights that was challenging for me, or even coming close to a PR on a double, I knew that in the set before, if the bar moved fast, I was strong, and I knew also if the bar moved slow, I was not strong. So I wasn't perceiving speed as something that I needed to build. I never worked on building speed. My whole thought process was if I move that weight fast, that means I'm strong. It wasn't anything like I need to be fast to be strong. Like, no, I didn't. There was no trying to build speed. There was no dynamic effort. There was no compensatory acceleration. No plyometrics, no jumping, anything like that. Like I just knew that if I needed to beat 1,000 pound squat that day, and 900 pounds moved fast, then 1,000 pounds is going to happen. But if I got in there and 900 pounds moved slow, like, okay, it's not going. I used speed kind of as a gauge of how my strength was, but I never trained speed to get stronger. In the end, we're all getting to the same point. You know what I mean? But when I hear podcasts with like Dave Tate or people who are well revered and they talk about all these things, I'm just like I feel uneducated because I don't know what any of that stuff means. You know what I mean? I never knew what it meant. I was using the same I was using the same tools just with different thought processes attached to them. And I'm starting to realize that just because I don't know those things, just because I'm not necessarily educated, like when somebody names a training program, or let's just say progressive overload, linear progression, like if they just compensatory acceleration, like when people use these like textbook educated terms, like I don't use those in my daily life to explain my training or to help people with their training. uh, I just use dumbed down meathead words to describe the exact same thing. I'm learning now that that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. It just means that I'm not the type of person that ever focused on that part of it, and it never stuck. um, I'll be like, if I'm if the bar moves fast, that means I'm strong. It had nothing to do with training speed. So if you take anything from this, and if you're still watching, just because you don't sound educated or you don't use the educated terms, it does not mean that you don't know what you're doing, whether it's in powerlifting or anything else. If you understand the process and you have gotten to a level where you are ahead of the majority of the people in it, you know what you're doing. Just you don't have to use the fancy words um, to show that you know what you're doing. Your results prove that you know what you're doing.